We now come to the most famous part of this very famous story. Famine stalks the land. In Egypt, there is sufficient food to ride out the shortage, thanks to the wise management of Joseph and the fact that Joseph's God had revealed to him the coming famine. In other places, there had been no preparation. One of those places was Canaan, where Jacob and his sons were facing starvation. Isn't it interesting that Joseph gives one of his sons a name which means I have forgotten my father's household? That's at the end of chapter 41. At the beginning of chapter 42, his family re-enters his life. You never know when people from your past are going to re-enter your life. I have an adopted son who left his birth family to become a member of ours. 26 years later, his birth family re-entered his life. God has perfect timing in everything and never try to predict what he's going to do. Jacob seems rather short with his boys. Why are you sitting around? We are starving, but I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy grain. The brothers agree to go. As he has before, Jacob plays favorites. He does not send his youngest son, Benjamin, with them. He is afraid something might happen to him. He is willing to risk the other 10 sons, but not Benjamin. And that's quite a message to send to your kids. In the previous chapter, Joseph interprets someone else's dream and sees it fulfilled. Now Joseph gets to see his own dreams fulfilled. Joseph's dreams had occurred more than 20 years previous to these events. When God promises something, he fulfills it, but he does not say when. You can make requests of God, but you cannot put him on your schedule. He is arranging the events of the entire universe, and he must do things in his own time. It's interesting how God uses famine to bring about his will. In Luke 15, we read how the prodigal son is brought to his senses through a famine. God uses suffering, hardship, failure, and want as ways to leverage us into his will. If you find yourself in some kind of difficult circumstances, remember that this is just God's normal way of working. So the 10 brothers head for Egypt. It would have been at least a 2 weeks journey. They didn't send servants, they went themselves. It would appear they joined a number of others who've also gone to Egypt to buy grain. There are a lot of people who are depending on the Egyptian grain supply to stay alive. The brothers arrive and bow before the Prince of Egypt. We don't know if Joseph was anticipating his brother's appearance, but there they were. The man in charge of the grain supply is none other than their long-lost brother. But they don't know who he is. Not one of them recognized Joseph. Well, why not? You do not see what you do not expect to see. We can tell from the text that they all thought he was dead. Joseph really roughs them up. Why is he so hard on them? The text specifically says that when Joseph saw the brothers, he remembered his dreams. He now treats them in such a way that they will bow down before him. And that's one possible reason he treats them the way he does. There are other interpretations. There is a ministry that builds a series of Bible studies around the life of Joseph. They argue that Joseph is processing his grief and anger over the way his brothers treated him. And that's possible. Or possibly Tim Rice, the lyricist in Joseph's amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, has it right. He argues that Joseph is trying to see what kind of men they had become. It had been more than 20 years since he had seen them, and Joseph leaves room for them to change, to become different men. You have heard it said, people never change. Don't you believe it? Joseph asks about Benjamin. Maybe he wonders if they have done away with him. He accuses them of being spies. They protest strongly. No, we just want to buy food. We are all members of one family. We are honest men. Honest men? Joseph had to feel the irony of that last statement. They weren't very honorable in the way they treated him. So Joseph decides to make them jump through lots of hoops. We see what they are in our next video.